Inauguration Day. Happy Dr. Martin Luther King Day. This is Two-Way, and it's the morning meeting. Thank you for joining. Dan, Sean, and I are excited to be with you today, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, then a special 11:30 Eastern Time. Dan and I and others will take you through the live events of President Trump, and then I'll be back at 6. So three two-ways tonight with you. Thank you again for being part of this one. Gentlemen, tell me about the highlights of your weekend. Sean was in Washington. Dan was at a decent removed. Sean, what was the highlight of your weekend? Just one for now. We'll get to more.
I'll just go with the last thing. I had a great time at that rally yesterday, seeing the Village People sing YMCA live as a child of the '70s. That was box checked.
Yeah. Dan, you weren't in Washington, but highlight of your weekend connected to the inauguration. I don't want to hear about your Yahtzee victory over your boys.
Yeah, all four kids were homesick this weekend. So
Yeah.
the highlight was getting out of the house for a good run in the morning by myself.
All right, awesome. Let's check in live at the on cable news just so you can see where everybody is here at 9 o'clock. So we'll throw that up. Obviously, the president's schedule today, the president-elect schedule. I'll run through that in a minute. And then Joe Biden issued some pardons a little while ago. Most of you probably know if you own phones. We'll just leave that up and talk over that for a bit. Pardoned Dr. Fauci, pardoned General Milley, pardoned those involved, the staff and members involved in the J6 investigation preemptively, and we'll talk about what that means and run through the day. And then, as always, we're delighted to take your questions on this day more than any other. Peace, love, and understanding, incredible American tradition, the peaceful transfer of power. And if you're going to go in the chat on YouTube or on X, please write things only in that are consistent with peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace for all. And if you're here on the two-way platform, again, please raise your electronic hand. We'd love to get your questions in today, comments, whatever you'd like about how you're feeling on this day and the mechanics of the transition, whatever you'd like. But we would love to get some new folks in today to start the week right. I sound like I'm the host of a children's show, but anyway, please raise your hand if you'd like to comment. President Trump, Melania Trump, arrived this morning at the St. John's Church. They'll attend a service. Everything today will be kind of the norm, except for, as you know, the inauguration itself will be inside. It's not that cold here, I got to say. And there's some conspiracy theories about why it's inside. Still probably the right move. I will tell you, having spent more than 2 hours in an Uber last night, the security is insane. I've never seen Washington like this. There are random streets closed all over town. Over a mile from the Capitol, they're closed streets. I cannot figure out what's going on, but there's a lot of security. And as I said, the big difference is things will be inside. So 12 o'clock, President Trump will be sworn in the Capitol Rotunda. Lots of interest in who's getting the rare seats there besides members of Congress and other very big VIPs. So particularly the question of the private sector, right? Who's not in the government who gets into that room? We'll be watching that. Then the President Trump will deliver his inaugural address. And then the big viewing area is back at the Capital One Arena where the rally was last night. I believe President Trump's going to go to that event after he's sworn in. He'll sign executive orders, I think, based on what I've been told and what I've read, on a rolling basis. Some in the Capitol, maybe some on stage at Capital One. And then he goes back to the White House. After the inaugural lunch, there's the parade at the Capital One Arena. Very much looking forward. The image in my head of the parade in there is it's kind of like the Westminster Dog Show. And they're just going to parade around in a circle. I don't really know how that's going to work. Presumably acts on stage. And then he'll go to the Oval Office and he'll settle in for his presidency. And again, we expect a lot of executive orders. We'll talk about that. Finally, he goes excuse me, to three official inaugural balls tonight: the Commander-in-Chief Ball, the Liberty Inaugural Ball, and the Starlight Ball. And there'll be some action on Capitol Hill as well. We'll talk about that. All right. So, Sean, just start us off 30,000 feet. The pardons are a huge deal, obviously, done at the last minute for clear reasons. What are you looking at today that people should think about that they may not be thinking about?
So there's, I think, three pieces to today. There's what Biden's doing on the way out. We can talk about the pardons later because I do think that we'll go down this rabbit hole later if we want, but I just think that beyond the names and whatever, the precedent that this has set is going to be monumental because you can't now talk about President Trump, what he can and cannot do, after this happened. So again, I'll shelve that for now. The Biden on his way out is story one in my mind. The pomp and circumstance is number two. The swearing in, the executive, whatever, all that part of it, and then three is the executive orders and the actions, as I mentioned. That is sort of, so that's how I divide the day. Biden leaving, Trump getting sworn in, the pomp and circumstance piece of it, and then all of these executive orders in action. 200 of them. I thought the big line yesterday that I took away from Trump's rally speech, which was funny because I know that was internal debate, is he said, I've got 200 executive orders in action, and some of the staff told me that they think we should spread them out. And I said, no way, we're doing them all day one. That's a big deal. And I think you're going to see a lot. He wants that shock and awe. And I think that's to me a real telling thing. It's making sure that people know that things are changing day one.
Dan, what preview the day macro for us?
Yeah, I mean, to pick up on Sean's point, I wish Biden hadn't done what he did. And I think it is a dangerous precedent. This idea of I'm going to just get ahead of the curve because someone's been attacked politically, but they didn't do anything, but I'm issuing a bunch of pardons is pretty dangerous. I'll be curious in 4 years from today what we all may be saying on that front. Look, I think as far as Trump goes, if there's 200 executive orders-ish, there's going to be, let's say, 70%, 80% that are probably pretty popular, that if you polled them, they're 85, 70%. What are the ones that are unpopular that they are hoping kind of get overwhelmed by the popular ones? I'll be watching that. And two, how do Democrats respond? Who amongst the shock and awe can have a moment of standing up, potentially kind of spark the party's energy? If there are raids today in Chicago and Colorado, those two states just happen to have governors thinking very seriously of running for president. Gavin Newsom appears to have flubbed his moment in the sun. Can Jared Polis or J.B. Pritzker have a moment, as part of standing up to Donald Trump?
The thing that's interesting about that is, just as a side note, again, don't want to go off on that. I don't think you're going to see it happen for two reasons in terms of the mass raids. I think he's going to definitely make securing the border and immigration a massive priority today. But the thing that's fascinating about some of the speculation on potential raids and things like that is, one, I don't think that Donald Trump, who is the ultimate stage crafter, wants a dueling image of him getting sworn in, going to balls and all that, and a bunch of people getting rounded up. So number one, the executive producer doesn't want to see that. Number two, though, there is the actual taking control of government. So if you're Tom Homan or whatever, you can't just have a mass deportation without coordinating it with the institutions, right? The actual law enforcement agencies. And you don't get that power until 12:01 today. So there's an element of planning and execution of any exercise of this sort that takes time. So they might start talking about things, but I don't think you're going to see these kind of sweeping actions that have been speculated on.
So let me just say a few things globally, and then we're going to drill down on some of the topics you guys raised. I spent the weekend talking to a lot of people, including very senior people on Capitol Hill and Trump world, on the executive orders. And either they're still trying to figure them out or there's disinformation going on, because there were very serious people saying things about what was going to be in them that conflicted with each other. My best sources have long said, Donald Trump says he loves the word tariffs to overstate the case. He doesn't want tariffs. He wants the American leverage to grow the American economy. So there was reports that we're going to beat across the board tariffs, as has been talked about, then other people saying no. So we'll have to see. But I continue to say,
well,
it's a
Mark,
mistake.
I'll tell you, every lobbyist in D.C. is freaked out about this, right?
Of course.
But I'll give you my prediction. I had thought it's much harder to be surgical, right? To go in and say, we're going to do Canadian dairy products coming. I mean, as opposed to, I could see a blanket, I'm doing a 10% tariff for 30 days while we evaluate the situation. So big impact, short on duration. That allows everyone to plead their case to him, to beg for exemptions, et cetera. That's, if I had to guess, you're going to see a shorter term impactful thing on something like a tariff.
Again, I've stopped trying to figure it out because it's so up in there. You see the Trumps and the Vances in church there and we'll dip in and out of some of that. So the executive orders, I think, obviously a big deal. I think, Dan, you're right that the idea is to group them together so that the unpopular ones, there's no bandwidth in the press to cover 200 things. So along with everything else, we'll see about that. I don't know if you guys.
Hold on. Hey, Dan, can I just ask you as a sort of a contemporary, like, it's an interesting strategy. Like, I don't know where I thought about this just strategically. Is it better to push 200 out day one to get I got 200 things done day one? Or is it, hey, we're not going to get the full, you can't explain them all if you do it that way? I sort of can see this either way.
Yeah.
Well, I think so.
Go ahead, Dan. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think they telegraphed what issues. And I think, Sean, the message that they probably want tomorrow morning or tonight is action, right?
Right.
Biden, they say, has been missing in action, drooling in his soup, so to speak. Like, where is he? Where is Kamala? This is like piss and vinegar, like in your face. And I think that is what they want. And people know immigration, energy, federal workforce, DEI. They've drilled that into the public the last 96 hours. So I don't even think people, if you polled them, will know what specifically they did. It's just a show of action.
Yeah. So think about this. I heard early this morning, I haven't confirmed this, that the largest number was like 22 executive orders and actions done on day one, right? By doing 200, to your point, you get that talking point. On day one, I issued 205, whatever. I mean, this gives him a show of force.
Yeah, new sheriff. I'm very interested in the speech. Last night's speech was basically the last speech of the 24 campaign. It was like the stump speech. I'll be curious to see what he does today. There'll certainly be, as I understand it, no big surprise. There'll be some unifying lines in the speech, but is the main message of the speech, the takeaway of the speech, and what's this? Do they write a signature soundbite? Amazing to me. People are still writing inaugural addresses and states of the state that don't have the line that the comms people want to be the soundbite. Amazing. I assume they'll have that. So I'm curious to see what is this year's American carnage.
Well, you saw no. I agree with you, and I think what is it? Let me just check. I pushed this out, but they're already pushing this line out about common sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he wants this to walk out from. Let me just he basically says a revolution of common sense. I think that's that they want everyone to take that away.
Let's see if he actually delivers it, because as you know, he's an independent cuss. I've been thinking a lot about this transition. It is unlike any we've seen. We've talked about some of the reasons why. It's not like second Clinton, second Bush, second Obama, because it's brand new. They're sweeping in new people. It's not the kind of jump starting to try to get some momentum for a few months after a reelect. But at the same time, obviously, it's not like the first term of a reelected president. There's been nothing like this. I will tell you, having interacted with lots of Trump people of all sorts this weekend, there's so much of a quiet confidence that they are going to produce a lot of change, that the Democrats are no match for them right now, that if they can get their internal house in order within the administration and between the Republicans on the Hill and in the White House, that they know what they're doing. And they are really infused with this private sector talent. All these people, particularly the tech people, but not just the tech people. There's so much private finance and CEOs of retail and aerospace, defense. There's so much confidence that they will deploy those people working public-private, but also that the private sector is ready to take the deregulation, the energy policies, the tax cuts eventually, and just everything in the executive orders, and take all of that and have huge economic growth and opportunity. And finally, there's less gloating. And Sean, I want to go to you and ask you about this in a moment. I sense less gloating amongst the Trumpers here than I would have expected. They're glad they won. They're excited to get started, but they are not triumphal. They're barely thinking about the Democrats. They're barely thinking about the election, except as a mandate to get stuff done. Let me remind everybody, and again, we're going to go through some topics and then get to your questions. Remind everybody, we'll be back on at 11:30 this morning, okay, for live coverage. We'll watch the swearing in and the speech together, and then we'll talk afterwards with some guests and with you. And then tonight I'll be back at 6. And then a reminder that on February 2nd, right here in Washington, D.C., we'll all be back in town, our first live event. I talked to a lot of people yesterday at various events who are super excited to join us on February 2nd, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You can buy your tickets now. Go in the chat on YouTube or here on two-way in the chat, and you can get the link twoway.tv to buy tickets. So reminding everybody about that. All right, let's talk about the pardons, and you guys both mentioned them. Dan, tell me why you think Joe Biden did it. Because the more I think about it, as was suggested, the precedent is horrible. Donald Trump could say, I'm pardoning anyone I've ever liked for everything.
Exactly.
So what do you think was motivating Joe Biden? Was it personal concern for these people? Was it to heal the country? What do you think motivated this?
I think he genuinely believes that Trump is going to go after him. And, the part of the pardons that to me, like, I get Fauci. He's just been a lightning rod and a poster child for the right. Even General Milley a little bit. The fact that he pardoned the January 6th staffers, like, I've never heard of staffers being, pardoned kind of in general. Like, it's always been like the person at the top. I think he just genuinely believes they're going to be tormented. Their legal bills will be, almost bankrupt them and ruin their lives. I think he believes that they did nothing wrong, that this is just going to be retribution because it was uncomfortable for Donald Trump. But to your point, Mark, it is a horrific precedent that I think we may rue the day, or Biden, Democrats may rue the day this was done.
Totally.
Sean,
Also,
Sean.
this gets back to the lack of a message. I mean, we've seen this with the hearings, right? The Biden response the other day on television and this today. This has been sloppy all around. There's someone in the Democratic Party, whether that's Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, needs to step up and basically, there's an old saying by Marine Corps General Krulak that I love, which is, in the absence of leadership, take charge. Somebody in the Democratic Party, and I'm not giving any ideas out here, needs to step up and say, okay, this is our message, this is our thing, but this does not help their response today. I mean, just start talking about not just, but there's a bunch of other people in that mix of pardons. And this has been sloppy. He's not answering for it. He's not explaining it. Nothing. So I think, and to Dan's point, I agree wholeheartedly. This is, you cannot come back now and criticize Donald Trump for anything he says or does if you're a Democrat and stayed silent today.
You know what, Mark? Just quickly, on that point, I'm looking online quickly. I don't see a single leading Democrat who has said anything so far publicly in support of what Biden just did.
Here's the Bidens receiving the Trumps. We'll watch that. One thing we didn't mention is he referenced in the rally last night that he's going to pardon the J6 hostages, freedom fighters, whatever you want to call them, to criminals today. And so again, what Joe Biden has done, Democrats will say it's apples and oranges, but to me, it's really a dangerous precedent. It's kind of mind-boggling. But what Donald Trump's about to do, I'd say, assuming he goes through with it, same thing. The mass pardon of all these people is two horrible precedents. All right.
Wait, can I just say, by the way, I will be very curious tonight on Fox News. What leads the first, 10 minutes of Hannity and prime
Fauci.
time?
It'll be Fauci.
Is it Biden or is it Trump? Shock and awe pageantry.
It's Trump. Yeah. It's Trump. Yeah. It's Trump. But Fauci will get a lot of coverage. All right. So you see there the Bidens and
Kamala Harris
and Kamala Harris, but they're going inside there. All right.
Maybe they'll talk pardons.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So keep watching.
By the way, it will be interesting to see on the pardon front whether he does everybody or whether he carves out. Because I think the one thing I'll say,
he's got to carve out. He's got to carve out some. He's got to. JD Vance forecast.
I was going to say that's exactly right. When JD and these other folks specifically referenced violence against police officers and law enforcement, they would have run those comments by him before they did it. There's no way you're going to comment on something like this,
or they would have walked it back.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think that JD or any of the other guys would have said what they said and gone out as far if they hadn't checked with Trump first to see where, that they were good.
Yeah. I will say another thing I picked up consistently this weekend, which I've mentioned before, the regard that people have for JD Vance and the role he's played and the role he's going to play is quite high. And that's even amongst people at the convention. We go back to the convention. At the convention, when it seemed like Trump was headed towards picking Vance, again, I've talked about this before, there were very full-on MAGA people, both close to Trump and not, who thought it was a horrible pick, disastrous pick. And even after he was picked, there were people who said, not so great. I don't hear any of that now. People are sky high about him and about how he's handled his portfolio so far, and their expectations for him. Sean, what do you think about my reporting and analysis of your departing neighbor?
Well, he has departed. The moving
Yeah.
vans were there.
Okay.
So and all of the barricades got pulled away.
Did they own
yeah,
that house or they rent that house?
well, I assume they own it. Yes,
They own
they
it.
do.
And,
Yeah.
and I don't think
Now
they sold it, as far as I know. So
I don't believe so. I'll let you know if
okay.
there's a sign that goes up
Yeah.
or if
Okay.
renters move in.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I think you're absolutely right in terms of your analysis and what you're hearing. He is, I think he is the future. And the funniest thing about this is that, we all know, I mean, everyone in Washington is always plotting. Well, okay, well, I'll do this and then 4 years later and I'll run for this office. And I think JD has completely upended that because for so many people who are biding their time, trying to figure out how I can run, if he keeps going the way he's going, I mean, I don't even know that there'll actually be a primary.
That's such a good point. There were people this weekend who really stunned me who said, like, they're talking about Vance 28 like it
Yeah.
was like a foregone conclusion. Like, here's how it'll sequence out into 29. I was really surprised. Dan, do you have a sense? Speak for the entire Democratic Party, as we often ask you to do. Do they find Vance to be like a star? Do they think he's a hack? Like, what do they think of Vance in your party?
I think the opinion of Vance has changed during the campaign. I think at first there was a little bit of like, he's a gaffe machine, he's out over his skis, like maybe the stage is a little too big. I think now he's good. He's disciplined.
Yeah.
He is a little
Yep.
bit of a happy warrior. Like,
Yeah.
even though he can be
a
kind of
lot of
stern
a lot of a happy warrior.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
And
so I
great,
think
just the story is so great. I mean, just in terms of what he has overcome personally, um,
totally.
I think it's a great story. He's so articulate. I mean, he puts on a master class when you hear him do an interview with folks, and he has armed with such knowledge that it's great. I mean, both him and Rubio to me are
Yeah.
some of the best
Well,
people to watch on show.
And if I'm a
Dan,
Democrat, you're
yeah.
thinking, okay, Trump has this new coalition. It is a working class coalition that has become kind of multi-eth or racial ethnic coalition. JD Vance, to your point, Sean, with that personal story, can be someone who can inherit it, right? Like Ted Cruz and even, Marco Rubio, it's a little disjointed. When you think of somebody who I could naturally see take that mantle with a little bit of, less, or a little more polish, a little less kind of, blowtorch, but still forceful, he's the guy.
I'm recycling my best JD Vance line today. I believe it's only the third time I've used it, and I'm always entitled to use all my good content 3 times. He speaks fluent MAGA with a suburban accent. And if you haven't ever read it or don't remember it, go read the interview he did with Ross Douthat of the New York Times. This guy, and again, you hear it all weekend. This guy, remember his career, not his childhood that Sean referenced. This guy is such a big player in the tech world. And I'm telling you, one thing that was on vivid display this weekend, we talked about it last week. The Democratic Party needs a plan right now to not be wiped out of corporate donations because they don't have the majority. And JD Vance is going to raise a fortune and spend a ton of time with the donor community. Silicon Valley, they're going to make
Mark,
inroads
I don't know about
in
you.
Hollywood.
Walk around this weekend. To your point, I have been blown. I mean, people are walking around with their wallet open this weekend at these events.
I've never seen this.
It is mind-boggling.
Sean, are you able to share what you said to me about how open people want to be? You know what I'm talking about?
Well,
About how different it is from 8 years ago.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
guys,
look,
listen. Hold on. Not that not everything we say on this program is important and interesting, but Sean's about to make a point. I'm telling you, I've not seen it anywhere. It's hugely important. Ladies and gentlemen, Revelations by Sean Spicer.
3, 2, 1.
Well, look, I think last time I was looking at videos the other day from the 2017 when the van was literally being attacked from our transport from the Capitol back to the White House. The resistance was massive. This time, I'm walking down the street yesterday, people cheering with their hats on. I had people show up at events last night that I was like, you've got to be kidding me. The openness by which people want to be associated with JD Vance and Donald Trump is like light in day from what it was 8 years ago.
Can I say, though,
yeah,
there
go
is an opportunity for Democrats with all of this corporate kind of open wallet begging, I want to be seen with him.
Yes.
It is one thing for Elon Musk and some brilliant tech minds to say, how can we make the Department of Agriculture, for instance, more efficient, do more with less. If every Fortune 500 starts taking over their regulator and the CEOs are there handing out money to everybody, it is going to look like the robber barons have come and taken over government. And that is an opening for the Democratic Party to say, the working class stuff is nonsense. This is just a bunch of rich guys having fun with government, so Boeing can take over the FAA.
And you add in the tax cuts for the wealthy, and that's their main frame. But again, down that path lies no corporate donations.
Yeah,
and Trump and JD Vance are going to use their perch now to continue the small dollar machine, right?
Yep.
So it's a big challenge.
By the way, I can tell you this.
Huge.
I probably got 4 texts in the last 24 hours from the Trump team still raising money. I mean, these guys are amassing massive war chest.
Yes, and just to build on the point, Sean, you made, because you didn't make exactly the point I thought you were going to.
Sorry.
But you did. That's okay. In the past, if you're a Democratic-leaning lobbyist or corporation and you have to give money to Trump, you do it quietly, right? Or if you're hiring a Trump-related lobbyist, you do it quietly. Now, you put it in a press release.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I'm sorry, because I missed your point.
Oh, it's not even just that. Wait, hold on a second. On the Democratic side of the aisle, if you had a CEO or a company that wanted to be helpful, you had to put them in the closet at the reception so the base didn't see. It was even Obama and Clinton, it was very sensitive that those folks be seen and their money be counted.
Correct.
When I left the White House the first time, it was like, hey, we'd love to have you come, but I need you to sign an NDA, and then we're running everything through a Saudi Arabian shell company to pay you. This time, people are like, can we put your name on the press release to say that we're associated with you? There is a very, very different view of being affiliated with the Trump campaign.
That's the point I wanted you to make, because
thank you.
Again, folks,
I got the text.
I'm putting a halo around it. It is so different, and it's different than in most administrations. Most Democrat or Republican, you want to you say, okay, so and so just got elected. We need to go hire his brother who's a lobbyist or his former chief of staff who's a lobbyist. But you don't publicize it. There's going to be some disclosure you have to make. Now it's like press release. We're influence peddling, because they have an audience of one. They have to make Donald Trump know, those guys, they've been trying to send you to prison for 8 years. But now they're hiring your best friend and they're on Team Trump. It's incredible. And I'll say that we're about to see, even more than we saw during the transition, the analog of that with foreign leaders. Every foreign leader. I can't tell you how many embassy people approached me this weekend, and I'm not.
Oh, the number of when I was watching these motorcades go through town, and I'd look down, and if you've not been in D.C. before, diplomatic plates, signify obviously the ambassador or the consulate, members of the consulate, whatever. The number of motorcades of foreign delegations was unbelievable, and in a way that, again, I haven't seen. I've been to several inaugurations. It's almost insane how it's being treated down here.
Just remember, you can't make everybody happy. So now,
100%,
two and a half hours, the rubber meets the road.
100%. But I just got a fundraising solicitation for the DNC from Kamala Harris for the Harris Fight Fund. You're right, Dan, absolutely. But I say again, given your background in fundraising, you can keep raising money. You might lose some House votes. Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy might not be confirmed. There'll be problems. Governing is hard. But this money machine issue, and the people who are running for DNC chair, they're all mechanics. None of them are going to solve the problems we're talking about. It's going to be a challenge to raise money as a DNC for now.
Oh, without a doubt. And look, I'll say something for Team Trump. You own the NRSC and the NRCC because they are in your shadow, right? Yeah. It's all coming through you. So when you have to probably break some arms with that reconciliation bill, if you have all the money, right, you are going to own Mike Johnson and John Thune, and it's brilliant. I mean, you should do it. Most people can't do it because there's power on the other side.
We've talked about this before, by the way. I think James Blair, the incoming deputy chief of staff who oversees political affairs, may be the most powerful. When I was
Totally
at the
agree.
NRCC in 2000, Ken Melman was the political director, and he ran that place extremely well. Very disciplined, very forward thinking. I will be very interested in keeping an eye on James Blair. I think that's a guy you're going to see a ton of profiles come out on him in the next few weeks, because that goes to Dan's point. Every candidate, all of these things are going to run through James Blair.
100%. If you look at the last three two-term presidents, and again, they took their second term under different circumstances. Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, first time since the founding of the Republic, we had three straight two-term presidents. All of them criticized almost immediately from within their own party of not caring about growing the Republican Party or about making sure they were succeeded by someone from their party. Enough. I don't think that's going to happen here. And James Blair is a big part of it. We're going to cover governance for sure. But James Blair and the folks at the RNC, this is going to be an effort to really consolidate the majorities in Congress and to make sure Trump is succeeded by a Republican. Remember, Trump cares a ton about legacy. Clinton was succeeded by a Republican, although more people went to the polls on election day in Florida intending to vote for Al Gore. So it's always a little bit of an asterisk. But Clinton was not succeeded by a Democrat. Bush was not succeeded by a Republican. And Obama was not succeeded. All three of them turned the White House over to the other party, right? Am I right about that? Back me up.
Yeah, no, you
Yes.
are. And I think
All
the
right.
Democrats,
So,
it's part of
yeah.
their problem. This is a different beast.
Yeah, there's a different beast. And the White House political operation, the Ken Melman thing is a great example. Like, James Blair is empowered to use the powers of the White House and their congressional majorities to raise money, to recruit candidates, all that. It's going to be a very big challenge for the Democrats. And today is kind of the start of that. All right. Carly,
And by the way, the chief of staff is a master at politics and the dark arts and how to move the ball without fingerprints.
Yeah. And people think sometimes that Trump is a selfish person. Wouldn't argue with the thesis, but it's selfishly in Trump's interest to grow the Republican Party because he wants to be succeeded by a Republican. Carly, welcome in. Happy Martin Luther King Day. Happy Inauguration Day. Glad you're with us. Please tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind as we watch Donald Trump arriving at Blair House in a bit.
Hi, good morning. Today happens to be my birthday as well.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Carly.
birthday.
Very auspicious.
So
You know who you share that with?
I'm sorry?
There's a lot of, I was reading, there's a lot of people who share today as a birthday, so it's in vogue, I guess.
Perhaps. So first thing, Dan, you're such a nice guy. I hope that if there were more Democrats like you, I would probably lean a little bit your way.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Carly, where are you calling in from today?
So I live in Jersey. We left the Upper East Side a year and a half ago because it became crazy. So, I am here now. And I wanted to say that I'm really relieved. I'm happy because Trump won, because the disaster that the Democrats were, it's over today. But I wanted to ask Sean, what do you think is going to happen in the first 2 years when we have a minority and there's so much that has to be done and there's some people out there that still want to have revenge from what happened in the past? I mean, I don't want revenge. I just want success. What do you think? And I'm sorry, Mark, I love your books. Read them all.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very nice. Happy birthday again, Sean.
So I would just say, we started this thing off by talking about how different it was back then. And so when you come at Donald Trump and he faced the resistance last time, he's going to fight back. This time, like the elected officials, the corporate titans, the tech titans, right? And he understands that, quote, revenge isn't going to probably play as well. So there'll be a balance, is what I would suggest, and I think he can use the pardons today to say, I would have investigated Fauci, but Biden already pardoned him. So there's now a little bit of a cudgel that he has to say, look, I can't go after Milley because, well, Biden pardoned him, but look at so. It is hard. This isn't what he wants to do. He wants to fight back when pressed, but he's going to ride this wave right now. I wouldn't, to your point about others, it's very possible that like Jim Jordan holds hearings on Hunter Biden or with Weiss, the special counsel. But I don't know. I don't think that Trump really wants to do that unless he feels as though he's going to get attacked again or he's being attacked.
Let me give you an example of something that will be interpreted as retribution seeking, if it happens, which I believe it will. All right, JD Vance arriving here. Is the pulling of the security clearances for the 51 former intelligence officers. All right, there go the Vances up the steps, greeted by Emhoff and Harris, Harris and Emhoff. Shake hands all around.
It's a very cool outfit his wife is wearing.
Dan, I'm going to ask you, is that peach? What is that?
It's a little small on the screen. I think it's like a pale pink. I think that's very elegant. That's beautiful as a fashion critic on the side here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
We always go to you for fashion.
Very Jackie O-esque.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And JD Vance wearing his uniform, white shirt, red tie, dark, credible.
Well, you notice that I guarantee it, because like Trump's wearing blue, so there was definitely a little coordination there.
Yes. Anyway, Carly, you know, the pulling of the security clearances, okay? I'm of two minds about it, but you have to think about it from the Trump point of view. Those 51 people engaged in a Biden campaign conspiracy to trick the country about the Hunter Biden laptop. That's what happened, okay? And they've suffered no consequences for it. They all have their lucrative jobs. The media primarily has done almost nothing to hold them accountable for what they do. Many of them are national security analysts on CNN and MSNBC. They have these huge platforms. And so Donald Trump doing that is you know, he says, I'm a counterpuncher. And I have mixed feelings about his doing it because there's downsides to it. But if people want to know,
what would you say is the downside, Mark?
Yeah,
just out of curiosity.
Of his doing it, I think
9 years ago.
I think going back to something 9 years ago, and it's purely retributional. There's no reason for it except he's pissed at them for trying to destroy him.
There is a reason for it. I mean, the reason is that you have been given a clearance and you're going out there with that, you know, to claim I know this is Russian disinformation because of my expertise and my clearance and all this access to the information.
But they were leveraging their titles. They weren't leveraging.
And the reason they have a title is because of a clearance. And that clearance.
The reason they have the title is because they served in the government. They served in the government.
But former administration officials use those credentials to criticize the next administration. For the last 50 years, people have done this,
but not to lie, and then the media not holding them accountable for lying.
And you use that title. And that
I don't know about
clearance.
that. That's
Dan, this is not a one-off. You're right; they do it as one-offs. This was a conspiracy of 51 people organized by the Biden campaign to lie to the American people to try to help them win the election. It's not worse than everything Donald Trump has ever done. I'm just using this as an example. I'm using this as an example.
By the way.
But it shows, but just say, people say Trump doesn't hold a grudge. He held this one for 9 years. Sean.
I will tell you this, just to be clear, since we went down this trail, I thought of this. Just remember, and I wrote an op-ed that was in the New York Post last week, President Biden, for the first time in history, kicked me and every member off the Service Academy boards. Never been done before, ever.
I knew Sean was going to raise this.
Yeah, thank you. Well, see, but the point is,
Sean does hold grudges.
I do hold grudges. And I will tell you this right now. I hope to God, and I wrote this in the op-ed, he fires every one of the people who serves on a board or a commission, because President Biden went to court because of me, Spicer v. Biden, and argued affirmatively that they have the sole and absolute right to fire everybody. And the court affirmed that. So now President Trump should say, thank you, President Biden, for doing that. You're all gone.
Spicer v. Biden is both the title of a court case and also the story of the last 4 years of our shared lives. Carly, happy birthday. Thank you for joining. Please come back regularly. We always like people from Jersey. Donald, welcome in. I'm sorry, pardon me. Craig, welcome in. Please tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind.
Hi, I'm in Naples, Florida. I'm a high school history teacher at a small private school here. And I wanted to talk about Trump's legacy and the perspective of my students that I teach, mostly seniors. My brother had gotten me a cameo from Sean mentioning my 81% vote for Trump in our school's mock election, which was only, I think, in 2020. It's a school of only 400 kids in the high school, and it's a very conservative area in here in Collier County. But it was only won by Trump by one vote. in 2020, the last time we do this. We do this every 4 years. I can't
Craig,
remember.
Craig, I hate to interrupt you, but why does your brother not like you?
Why did he buy me the the cameo?
I'm just kidding. What a gift. What a
He's
brotherly
watching
gift.
right now, I believe.
Nothing says
All right.
I love you
All
like
right.
a cameo
Exactly.
from Sean
Exactly.
Spicer.
Craig, sorry, continue.
But I really started thinking about, because I teach economics and European history and art history, but we were talking a lot about the election, especially in economics with the students who were seniors at 18. And it really was making me think of the context of Trump, because these kids were 10 years old when he was first elected 8 years ago. Now they get to vote for him. He's the first person that they ever voted for. I'm 27, and Trump was the first person I voted for. And he was the only, so I was 18, I was freshman in college. He's the only person that's been a Republican nominee in my adult life. And for these kids, how do you think that's going to affect their psychology? Because they don't remember a time before Trump. Trump and Biden are the norm. And I don't think Biden's ever going to be seen as someone that's his own figure. It's just going to be an extension of Trump.
Yeah.
And in like 50,
great.
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Great
And
question.
in like 50 years, when we look back at our former presidents, and I was really thinking about this in the context of Jimmy Carter and someone's legacy. I don't know how long Biden's going to live for, but I think he's going to be one of those presidents that people don't remember. I don't think any of my students, unless they're really into history or politics, would remember Gerald Ford as president. And I think people only know Jimmy Carter because he lived so long and he had such a great post presidency. I think my thing is that I think Biden's going to be forgotten, and I think Trump's legacy is going to be very similar to perhaps FDR's. And even though Trump was only president for 8 years for 2 terms, or will be in 2029, it's going to be like he was president for 12 years because he was just looming force for 4 years. And how do you think it's going to affect the politics of these kids as they go into these seniors in high school?
Craig, brilliantly framed, and those kids are lucky to have you. Dan.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the last time that something like this happened, really in the last 70 years, was Reagan 2 terms and then Bush kind of an extension of him. And you got the Reagan Revolution and a generation of young people, Alex P. Keaton types, who were inspired by President Reagan. I think you're right. I mean, I think it's a smart way to look at it. I would hesitate to say Biden will be forgotten because you need to see what happens the next 4 to 6 years. I don't think anybody 4 years ago would have said that Donald, we'd be sitting here today with Trump's inauguration. I mean, after January 6th, it just was not seen as likely that Trump was going to ride back winning the popular vote and, storming back, so to speak, politically. So let's give it some time, but certainly given all the challenges in Biden's term, given why Trump won, it is possible that Biden is seen not as a transition to the future, but as a little interlude while Trump hovered over him and he just continues what he started 9 years ago.
Sean.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was thinking as you were talking, like growing up, to Dan's point, it was, you either had a Bush or a Clinton somehow, because Bush 41 had been Reagan's vice president. I mean, so there was like this whole cycle that for many in our generation, it was a Clinton or a Bush. And now, we've entered a whole new era of Trump. I agree. It's funny. Last night, as I was walking through these rallies, talking to some folks, it's interesting, right? So I keep forgetting, to your point, there were people at this thing last night that are 25 years old. And I was like, okay, so 7 years ago, they were, 17, 18 years old when I was press secretary. And it's just, it's hard to think that there are a lot of people who were very active in this cycle. Let's say that you were 21, 22 years old, you were voting, you were active, you were out knocking on doors, whatever. You were, 14, 15 when I was press secretary. And so you've got a whole group of people coming onto the scene in politics that know nothing but Donald Trump. And, I think to your point about legacy, there's no question, whether you are pro or con, that Trump will be a huge part of history going forward. And I think I firmly believe, as I've said before, because of the planning that has been done in the past 4 years for this eventual return, that this could be the most consequential 4 years of any modern president. And if that's the case, history will judge accordingly. To your point about Biden, I agree with you. I think that unless something monumental happens, which I doubt, he's going to just wither in the history books as a footnote between Trump's 2 terms.
Not just the planning, but also, of course, the current weakness of the Democrats. They're going to have to be an opposition party or Trump's going to steamroll, although the narrow majorities matter a lot. You talk about the dominance of Trump is one of my favorite facts from modern American history. And Dan and Sean back me up here, and Craig, because you're an historian too. A Dole or a Bush on the ticket every almost right 76 Dole was on the ticket, 80 Bush 41, 84 Bush 41, 88 Bush 41, 92 Bush 41, 96 Dole, 2000 Bush 43, 2004 Bush 43. There was a Dole or a Bush on the ticket every cycle. It's insane. And we've seen with the Democrats, we've seen Clinton and the Clintons and the Obamas, right? Not quite the same dominance, but a lot. Now, Trump, as you brilliantly pointed out, is a 12 years. 12 years where Trump not just dominated the Republican Party and the public dialogue, but the ethos and the kind of framing of the presidency, the whole thing. And
can I add 2 points?
Yeah.
I've never seen
finish. Let me just finish one point.
Oh, sorry.
One point is, and as we suggested earlier, he's trying to extend that. Trump wants the 2028 election, and whoever and Vance or whoever wants that next one to be about Trump too. Dan.
Oh, that convention in 2028 is going to be half of, maybe not even half. It'll be
exactly.
this much about the nominee and that much about Trump.
Three quarters.
What I was going to say just quickly is I've never seen a political candidate who in his 12th year of dominating is stronger, arguably, than when he started. Usually it's just a slow downward. So that's unprecedented. 2, on the Democratic side, the Clinton coalition is dead for Democrats, and the Obama coalition is dead for Democrats. So we have to build something new if we're going to be competitive in 2028, let alone 2032 after redistricting comes along and the electoral college is rejiggered. So,
Craig, brilliant question, brilliant framing. Please come back regularly.
Thank
and
you.
as I said, those kids are very fortunate to have you. Amy, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, please.
Good morning, and thank you. I'm in Virginia. As always, I really appreciate what you all are doing here. This is a smaller point than these big ideas, but I hosted book club yesterday, and we got to talking about day one actions. And one of my members is an elementary school teacher, and she echoed what I've been observing recently, and that is that they're getting no training and no guidance on what to do in the event of massive raids and the impacts on children in school. Like what happens when you bring children home on the bus and their parents aren't there anymore. And that's been my experience in almost every Head Start program in every state across the country. Very little preparation for what feels like an absolute certainty. Why do you think that is?
On the part of the schools or the federal government? Who are you?
The schools, the programs, the sort of like he is saying exceedingly clearly what's going to happen today or tomorrow. I believe it's going to.
Yeah.
But why aren't we who like deal with families and children living below poverty? Why aren't we more ready for this?
Okay, I've got an answer, but Sean, you go first, and then Dan, and then I'll weigh in.
Well, part of the reason it goes back to what I said a moment ago, which is that until there's a control of the federal government and an action, they can't. I mean,
but they're gonna.
Well, I mean, look, I think Tom Homan has made it very clear. I had him on my show a couple of weeks ago. They're going to start with criminals. So if you are if you are out there right now and you are a criminal in this country illegally, you should make preparations for your family. How's that? There's the warning. But that's where they're going to start. They've been very clear on that. And as far as why schools aren't doing it, well, I think because they don't. Again, what do you do? An announcement that said, "Hey, if your parents are a criminal in this country illegally, come down to the cafeteria. We're going to get ready." I just don't know.
The bus driver, are they going to let the kids go to the PE teacher? You know what? Like the actualness of raids happening.
Yeah. Okay, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, Amy, I had not thought about that, and it's a great question. It brings me back to 9/11 when kids went home that day and their parents were not there anymore, or a parent was not there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I think to Sean's point, as this is a political show, I don't think there will be a lot of sympathy for your parent was a illegal immigrant who committed a crime, and but that doesn't excuse the fact that there does need to be some real human planning for innocent people in this.
Yeah. Hey, Amy, let me say a couple things. First of all, even if the Trump administration has as highest priority the protection of kids in this process, even if it's supposed to be the through line of everything they do, there are kids whose lives are going to be upended. And that's true, even if, as I predict, just like with the tariffs, this is more bluster than reality. But as Sean said, if you're a kid of a criminal, yes, your life's going to be upended. So that's going to happen. But I'll also say that I would have liked this perspective applied for the last 4 years, because the Biden policy had kids killed on the border and kids killed during the process and kids living in a situation that their parents put them in that is scary, even though not afraid of necessarily being deported. So this
We've got
is
over
not
300,000 kids in this country
I know.
that have been.
Yeah,
And so
I know.
again,
We've been
I think
working on that.
So,
Like-
so Amy, the
Yes.
public overwhelmingly wants this public policy change. And I'm sure if you ask the public, they would say, but don't let it hurt kids. But it's going to hurt kids. It just is. It's heartbreaking. We're all parents. It's heartbreaking. But and I hope schools prepare. But at the same time, this change is happening, validated more than anything else about the election results by the voters. And I hope principals are dealing with it. But this is impossible to do, even on a limited basis, with the best of intentions, without hurting kids. But that's happened for 4 years. It's happened for 4
But
years.
I will also say, though, in Trump's defense, in his first term, when they were doing the separation of families at the border, even Trump was squirmish with the images of children, and made change. I mean, he didn't make a lot of let's reverse course, but on that front, he did make adjustments. I actually think he doesn't want the optics of this.
100%.
So that doesn't mean we won't go through some bad stuff for children, but hopefully in the long run, the majority of children will be somehow cared for during this process.
I will say this, and Amy, it's a great discussion that you're bringing up, one that's extends beyond the time limits of the show. But the thing that's fascinating about this is that unfortunately, we don't give it enough this real thought, because to Dan and Mark's point, I've been with President Trump. The one thing that affects him more than anything are images of children being hurt. Worldwide, I saw this with attacks in Syria, stories that he heard about a parent being lost. And so that's obviously going to be at the forefront of the discussion. And I've talked to Tom Homan about this in particular, who's going to lead the efforts. And one of the things that he always reminds me is, this is, to your point, this is never easy. But when a parent gets pulled over that was driving drunk or involved in a domestic dispute, the parent gets brought away. And there's sometimes it's Child Protective Services or something from the state or wherever that comes in and helps it. We do have systems to do that. But in our own country, under laws where people break a law or are accused of something, it happens every single day, right?
It does.
A parent gets pulled over
but
and
they're starting with criminals. Do you think they're going to stop with criminals? Because I don't think so.
No, but at the same time, here's what I would say to you.
Hold on. Barack Obama didn't stop with criminals.
But here's what's I just want to be very clear with something. You're absolutely right. They're going to start with criminals and they're going to keep going. So here's the message. If you are in this country illegally, start thinking now, right? It's like you are being given your warning. There is something that is probably going to come down the path. So think about your family. What do you want to do? Do you want to be with your kids? Do you want to relocate with them? But get ahead of it. To your point, Amy, everybody's gotten the message that President Trump campaigned on it and he's going to execute on it. So if you are in the country illegally, you shouldn't be surprised by any action that's coming up in the next few months.
And you should fight to protect your kids as best as you can as a responsible parent. And if you're not in this country legally and you're still, with Donald Trump's election, thinking of coming, think about your kids. You want a better life for them. That's why you're coming. You may not find a better life for them under these circumstances. Amy, so grateful to you for raising it. It's something that we all need to think about and continue to, in the journalism business, to hold the Trump administration accountable. We did not hold the Biden administration accountable for their inhumane policy. We did not. That was a failure of the media. We need to do it better here. But at the same time, Sean, I think, put it most eloquently of the three of us, the parents took this on. The parents made choices, and they have to protect their kids. And if the government's actions hurt the kids, it is, if it's done with as much humanity towards the kids as possible, it is not Donald Trump's fault. It's the parents' fault. They're the ones who put their kids in this place. They're not entitled to bring their kids to come here illegally and have their kids be part of the American experience by breaking the law. And I say this it just if the evocative imagery you used, my heart's going to break all day thinking about this. And I've been thinking about it a little bit because I've read art. There've been some articles already about parents being worried, and some parents, they never told their kids they were here illegally, right? So it's a very hard thing, but the parents did this, not the government.
One
The
last thing I'll
parents
say
did.
on this, to put a pin in it. President Trump has spoken pretty eloquently about the DACA recipients, right? Kids who are here because their parents brought them and it's no fault of their own. So he understands this. He will make accommodations for in those circumstances.
All right, Amy, couldn't be more grateful to you. Thank you for the
Thank you.
question, and
See you at
please
your
come back
show.
regularly. Oh, excellent. Bring friends. We're almost sold out. We'll get to that in a bit. All right, let's look live here. This is the Trumps, the Bidens greeting the Trumps. Sean, Dan, feel free to
Man, I
Mystery
can't
Political
imagine what
Science
Joe and
Theater
Joe
this.
Biden are thinking right now.
Yeah.
I
Just
think
can't
Joe Biden's
imagine
saying,
4 years
"Yay!"
ago that they thought this would be the case.
All right, let's see the order of the handshakes. Is it?
And by the, I'm just going to say it as a Democrat. They were not shown the same grace 4 years ago, and good for them for restoring this tradition.
Absolutely, it's very. the
Just
Bidens
as
have been
a side
decided.
note, since we're just remember when JD Vance walks into the vice president's mansion today,
Yeah, no,
he
it
was
that
not
board.
shown the grace
Yep.
by Kamala Harris and Doug, who, by the way, the Vances had reached out saying, "We have small kids. We'd love to talk to you about the mansion." And
Well,
nothing
it
in return.
sounds like Doug talked to JD's wife on the phone. That has been confirmed. But you're right, Sean. It was a bad look. It was a super bad look by Kamala's part. Look petty.
Yeah.
Dan, you are a fashion correspondent. What do you think of Kamala of Melania's hat?
I like it. You know, it's a little look. Anyone who is elegant but a little different, I like that. Just Dan Turrentine's personal fashion. Damon, I like it.
All right, so there they go in. They are going to ride up to Capitol Hill together. I don't know if the first ladies are. I know that the presidents are, but they'll ride up to Capitol Hill together, and that'll happen once we're
By
after
the way,
we're
what
off the
color
air.
tie? I couldn't see with the overcoat. What color tie is Trump wearing?
Blue.
It looks dark.
Blue. He's wearing a
It
blue
is blue.
tie.
Okay. All right.
It's his outreach to
Yeah, to Blue America.
Blue America. All right, Paul, brilliant. You can take that down. Guys, closing thoughts. Dan first. You're again just thoughts about what we're about to see.
Look, I got my red, white, and blue on. Whatever your party, like Inauguration Day is awesome. It's hope. It's the promise of something new. And I hope that, you know, as an American, Trump is successful in that his success is America's success. And, you know, enjoy the day. It only happens once every 4 years. Let's celebrate.
Sean.
All right, Dan, I will take your advice. I am going to celebrate all day long with your blessing. I'm excited for today. I think I'm really interested in the second part of today. What happens? How much does he get done through executive orders and actions? And I'm excited about what's to come for the next 4 years.
All right. I've written down everybody's name, whether you're watching on YouTube or Twitter or here on Two-Way. I have the capacity to handwrite everyone's name. I'm expecting you all come back at 11:30 Eastern time. I've taken attendance. If you're not back, I'll be disappointed. And I don't want to hear this talk about jobs or whatever. Like everybody back, 11:30 today. We'll be talking about stuff. We'll watch a lot of the coverage together. We'll dip into some audio, and then we'll watch Donald Trump be sworn in together. We'll watch his speech together, and then we'll talk about it all. And if you want to join, you'll see a link in my Substack if you get that. Also, in a little bit, I'll X out the link if you want to join. You can join again. You can watch us on X. You can watch us on YouTube Live, or you can watch here on the Two-Way platform. And then tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern. Well, that's our event. I'll get to that in a second. At 6 o'clock Eastern, Two-Way tonight. I'll be back. Some great guests. We'll watch highlights from the day. Any news? We'll know more then about executive orders. We'll have more reaction to the Biden pardons, preemptive pardons. So 2 more shows.
Hey, Mark,
today.
one last thing that we didn't get to. You know, we talk about these pardons. The reaction from those who got pardoned, I will be intrigued by. What does Fauci, what does Milley say?
Great point.
Adam Kinzinger said, like, I didn't want this, and I did nothing wrong. And I predict they'll all say that. They'll all say, I didn't need this, and some of them will say, I didn't want it, but they'll all say they didn't need it.
Can you refuse a part?
No,
it's not a. You don't co-sign it.
No,
Yeah, okay.
there's no way to refuse it. It's just the president
Return to
does it.
sender.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
find this.
Yeah. And then again, It's about to sell out, folks. So I'm warning you now. I will not be forgiving if you email me and say, I really want to come on your event on February 2nd, and I figured I could wait to the last minute to buy tickets. You cannot. So if you want to join Sean Spicer, Dan Turrentine, and myself, along with some special guests and members of the two-way community, February 2nd, you can put the graphic up now. February 2nd, 5 p.m. It's a Sunday night. There's no NFL games that day. We did not pick the date by fluke or out of a hat. So if you want those tickets, go to twoway.tv now, or again, you will not be at the Pearl Street warehouse that day. You'll be outside with a sad little sign saying "Need to." Selling tickets? Question mark. You don't want that to be you. You don't want that to be you. So buy your tickets now. Thank you for joining. Very grateful to you, Dan, Sean. Thank you both. See you at 11:30 Eastern Time right here on the Two Way Network. Have a good few hours without us.